episode 2 of the Rx7 cage build. If you haven't seen the first one, go check it out, it's on the link down there. And the goal for this episode is to get the rollover bar all bent up and installed. So, first thing we need to do is clear out the back part here. So we're going to move all these electrics out of the way, take out anything that's not needed. These ones here were for holding in the motors for the electric hood. That's not going to be used, because I have a different style hood on there, so that can come out. Not quite sure what these were for, but they can come out. And this centre section here, which held the spare wheel, that can all come out as well. A lot of stuff on most cars is spot welded, as you can see with these little bits here. So we've got a spot weld drill that will just take that, so we can go through one layer and just peel that off and leave the bottom layer intact. But actually a lot of this is just sort of seamed across with little welds, so we can just grind through those and hopefully that whole thing will come off in one piece. So we'll give that a go. Okay, so this is our door pillar and where the seatbelt bolts used to sit, and what we're going to do is actually hack this right across here, because down through here is where our tube's going to sit. Now obviously if we keep all this outside box here and put the tube down through, we're not going to be able to weld it up properly both sides as we want to. So what I'm going to do is chop out the frame, put the cage in, put the cage in and weld it up, and then I can just tack the frame back in place afterwards. So by the miracle of melting metal together, we can actually have the frame all back in, and so it will look like basically a sealed cover at the top here, but you'll keep this triangular frame and a bit of structure into the body. That's looking better, a bit more clearer and easy to get into anywhere that we need to. So as you can see, there is a fair bit of rock kicking around in this corner. It's actually been plated from the underside, so what I'm going to do is just take out all the bad metal and treat all of this as much as I can to make it, you know, to stop the spread of the rust. We've got a nice area here that we can work with. So what I'm going to do is make a plate that sort of comes out to here, somewhere around in there, and then that could be, I'll probably go all the way up to here actually, along the edge on there, because then what we could do is we could actually clear all this off and weld it all the way across here, all the way along that back edge, all the way down here and all in there. I'll then make a plate that goes up the back here. I'll probably take out these two 10mm because I'm pretty sure they're just for manufacturing. Make a plate that goes on the back here so that we can weld, so we've got sort of a bit of an L shape for the bar to sit right up against. We're getting there. It's not a quick process, but we've trimmed this out nicely to fit around it. We'll have another plate on the back here as well. So we've got one each side here, and once these are all welded in and the back plates are welded in, we'll be able to then start bending some metal. Right, so once again we find ourselves needing more gas in the welder, because there's been loads of welding going on, not just on this project, but on others. So I have a few bits I can do without having to wait for that. One is actually to bend up the main cage. So what I've done is I've measured up the width that I want it. I've measured up the total height that I want it to sit as well. So sort of level with or just below the roof dimensions on there. I've measured where I want the first bend to start from. So it's actually 35 centimeters, just above here, where I want the first bend to start from. And what I've done is I've mocked that up on the floor to give myself a template. So all of those dimensions, starting with this baseline here, I've marked it out done my widths on there and put a center marking on there. I've done then 2 uprights at 90 degrees to it and marked out the total height that I want to be, and then I've marked out the heights that I want the bends to start from, and I've also worked out the width that I want the top bar to be and marked that onto the center line on there. So it's actually 103 centimeters, so 51.5 each way from the center line. Then drawn a line on the outside of those 2 angles, so here to here, which then gives me the outside size. This isn't a center line side that I want it. This is the outside diameter that I want this cage to fit within, to be able to fit perfectly within, or the roll bar, sorry, to fit within, to be able to fit perfectly within the dimensions that I want. Now the great thing is, obviously, this is a cabriolet. So when I'm going to measure this up, I'm actually going to measure it with quite a bit of distance underneath to give myself a bit of extra room, because then even if it's too tall, I can just lop off a bit and bring it down to the right height that I want it. So that's one of the bonuses of doing a convertible car. If you want to see the videos that I've been using to get the ins and outs and the details of this, then check out the fabrication series. Really good series. And about 4 years ago, we did a video all about bending tube and the difference between it, what benders to use. In fact, it's exactly the same bender as we're using here. It's a JD squared, and how to work out the calculations of the bends that you need. So I won't go into full detail on that. I'll just give you into the basics of what I think you might need if you were recapping as such. But check those out, they are really good. So the first thing to do is to cut a piece of tube to length. So the tube is laying down there. I've got 3 6-meter lengths, so that hopefully should be enough for the full cage, but we'll see. And then I'm going to measure up these measurements down here, add probably about 4 inches to it, just on each side, so I've got those extra there, and a bit of tolerance. And then I'll start bending from the middle outwards. So actually, I only need the dimensions from one side, because in theory this is mirrored to one another. So we'll measure that up, and then start bending and do everything from there. I've measured out my length of tube and cut that down to size that I need. And what I've done then is I've marked the center line and lined that up with our center line up here. So once that's on the reference point, I've used this cheater tube. So I made this 90-degree bend and cut out where it starts on the tube bender, so I know where I have to put this into the tube bender to get the angle to where I want it. And I know, because of my protractor over here, that I need 75 degrees of angle on the first bend each side. So with that in mind, we can actually bend the first 2 bends on this tube. So the first bend is done, and that's looking pretty good. My mistake, it was a 60-degree angle that we needed, hence that one over there. But we'll use that for scrap. So we've got our center line here. I've marked the new line over here for where we're going to start that. The only thing that's different with this one is that we're going to need to level it. So the main difference between this time and last time is we need to make sure that our tube is zeroed. And what I mean by that is that it's at a level plane. For the first bend, you just chuck it into the bender, pull the handle and crank angle. Not a problem, that's fine because it's a round tube. But with the next one, we need to make sure that angle is absolutely flat with the previous one. We'll use this gauge, we'll make sure that our die is level in both planes, so that way and that way. And then we'll take it over to our piece of metal that we're trying to do and make sure that that is absolutely at the correct angle as well, so that we can get the bend just right. Absolutely essential at this point, something so simple and makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So now that that is zeroed, we'll crank this down, making sure that our line that we've made is in the same place and still in the right place. We will double check it because we want to make sure, and then we can set our gauge and start cranking. So the main hoop is done. I've done the other 2 bends off camera, and here it is. It has come out beautifully. I know, right? I'm more surprised than you are. Obviously, the height-wise, this is, like I said, I've done it with way more height than is needed, so I can actually lop off about 15 centimeters off the bottom to drop this whole thing down. I want it to sit below roof level, so obviously our door bars are going to come up and meet up with it. So I've measured up from here, and actually this point here, where we marked up with the bend, is actually going to sit down there. So I'll get to doing that, get this sat in place, and then it's going to look pretty smart. Cool, so since the last time I picked up the camera, I've welded in the base plates on both sides, and I've put in the rollover bar as well, and that is just held in there by some tacks on the weld, so it's not properly installed yet, but I thought I'd chuck the bucket seats in and see how that looks and sits, and it's pretty good. Just need to make a couple of adjustments on this seat, I think. That's everything for this video. In the next one we'll be doing all of the rear part of the cage, so all the bracing and everything that goes onto that, and notching it and things like that, and Ollie might even help. No, guess not, because he hadn't touched this one. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.